Hello, everybody. It's James here with WSI. Brand new year and a brand new guest. And this time it's ECW original and tag team partner extraordinaire. It is Gary Wolf, the Pitbull. Pitbull number one as well.
That's right, baby. Pitbull number one, the Pitbulls, hardcore Hall of Famers.
Absolutely. How did you figure out that you were one and Anthony was number two?
It just happened. We just, we were sitting around one day and, we were going to school at the Monster Factory in Paulsboro, New Jersey. And, at that time, you're going to school, they tell you, don't worry about a gimmick yet. First, learn how to work. Then you find your gimmick that fits you and suits you guys. So that's what we did. We went to school and it took about 2 years, 1988. By 1990, we signed a deal for Japan, for New Japan. Mm-hmm. So, we were moving pretty fast, real fast.
With just before we go to Japan, because I've got far too many questions that we're ever going to get through. But, as I say, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So I've written too many. But one thing I'm absolutely super keen on talking to you about, more than ECW, more than Japan or anything else, is how did you end up getting hooked up with the WWF to do enhancement work? Was that through the Monster Factory?
Yes. They contacted Larry Sharp and said, do you want to bring some of your students down, to a couple shows that were 8-hour drive, but we didn't care. We did it, So we went to Niagara Falls. We ended up working for them about 10, 11 times, doing shows with them.
Yep, I can actually give you the entire list of people you work with. So we have the Hart Foundation, the Twin Towers, the Brainbusters, the Powers of Pain, the Rougeau Brothers, and in singles, I've got you with Barry Windham and Ted DiBiase. That's quite a who's who of guys you got in the ring with.
And we were so young, man. We were kids. No lie, we were kids. And when we went up there, we were in awe. Like, we had no idea, like, wow, this is like the WWE. This is it. This is the top, the mega company, And luckily, we were already training and working out before we went to wrestling school, because we were just bodybuilders and we didn't realize there's no money in that at the time. So, that's when we decided, hey man, let's go to the Monster Factory, see what happens.
Mm. And so I'm thinking, some months training, you're recommended. Larry Sharp brings you up. Who
and Charlie Fulton.
And Charlie Fulton as well.
Yes.
So how many months did you have before you ended up doing your first big arena show for the WWF?
Let me see, probably about almost 2 years we were there. And then he started, sending us out to do other stuff and just, and then that's when Cowboy Bob Orton would come around, check out the school, and they would see us, and all the older guys at that time, they loved me and Anthony. We were lucky. Like, they loved our gimmick. They just thought it worked good. And we were working with the Samoans, the Wild Samoans off of Sika so much on independent shows that they got the word around that, we were a good team to work with, especially the older guys. They could count on us. Like, we wouldn't let them down. We would always make them look good and stuff like that.
So take me back to the WWF then. The first time you go and you get there at a certain time, probably very early, 12 o'clock or whatever. Who is the agent who tells you what you're doing and settles you in?
That was the old man. I forget his name. He had the white hair. Pat Patterson a couple of times would tell us what we had to do, or Jim Cornette would tell us what we had to do. So every time we were there was somebody. And then there was an old man that would carry a suitcase, a Hallenberg around. And this Hallenberg was packed with money. Had to be over $1 million in there, at least. And what he would do is give everybody a draw. Every night, like WWF, they get paid weekly by check. They send it to your house. But if you need money on the road, they'll be able to give you a draw right there. And I remember the old man, I just forget his name, and I'm ashamed of myself.
I can throw some Jack Lanza or Chief J Strongbow, or it wouldn't have been Gorilla Monsoon. He handled the money in the 80s.
Well, Gorilla Monsoon loved me and Anthony because he's a Jersey guy like we were. We came from New Jersey, and he was all over us. That's how he liked us enough that he told Vince, I want to bring these guys and they wanted to sign us. Absolutely, positively, they're signing us, and they were giving us our first match coming in on a pay-per-view was going to be against the Hart Foundation. So, you know what I mean? They saw us against them, and it just so happens that Gorilla Monsoon was doing the commentating that night at that house show. And he's like, you know, these guys, they're young, but they're already bigger than some of the guys we have here. You know, and back in the 80s, you remember, everybody was big. Everybody was big. I walked in that locker room, I could not believe the things I would see, especially in the men's room, and how everybody was partying, everybody was doing crazy stuff. It was insanity. It's nothing like it is now. It's apples and oranges, put it that way.
So, of all the people that I rattled off name-wise beforehand, who were the guys who were like most gracious and giving, and, you know, giving advice as well as giving moves to you in the ring?
Well, like Don Morocco, he was the one that actually, him and Kevin Sullivan, we were really, really tight with Kevin Sullivan. I met Kevin Sullivan in Daytona Beach, Florida, when I just started going to the wrestling Monster Factory. So I introduced myself to him in a gym in Daytona Beach. And I was there with like 5 friends, and we were going down there for spring break just to have a blast, you know, and get some girls and get laid and have a good time. And I went up to him, started talking to him, and, you know, he's probably looking at me like, who the hell is this fucking shithead? You know what I mean? You know, like, because I wasn't even, I was just going to school. I haven't even graduated yet. So I just told him, nice to meet you, pleasure to meet you, because that's what I was told to do when I see a wrestler. Introduce yourself, because it's very political, our business. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, you got to be like nice to everybody. So I introduced myself to him. We talked for a couple of minutes. He went back to his workout. I went back to my workout with my boy. And when the workout was done, you know, we were drinking a protein drink, just sitting there. He comes walking up. You know, my friend was just like, oh, God, here comes Kevin Sullivan. You must have pissed him off somehow. And I'm thinking, nah, there's no way. So he turns around and he's like, him and woman were there. That's when he was married to Nancy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, you know, look, he goes, what are you guys doing here? He's like, I said, we're here for about 2 weeks. We're here for spring break and we're partying. He's like, all right, well, listen, what are you doing tonight? I said, nothing, probably drinking and going out. You know, that's about it. He's like, well, come to my house. I have a condo right on the beach in Daytona. It was the only condo at the time on Daytona Beach. There was one tower, and he was on the top floor. And he said, come over, I'll let the doorman know. And I had to do it. There was no way I could say no. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, I wasn't marking out for the guy. It was just, I got to get connections now. I got to get my, you know, I got to get my name out there and get people to know. And, at the time, I guess he was working for Florida Championship Wrestling, maybe, or NWA. And I mean, he was running back and forth to his room on the phone, 20 times while I was over there, because he was a booker, you know, at the time. So, but it was really nice getting to know him, and for him not to know me and, you know, invite us over to his house with Nancy and have dinner. And we had a really nice time. And after that, you know, I went back to school. I stayed connected with him, and then he introduced me to a guy out of Hawaii called King Curtis. Okay, King Curtis is good friends with Don Baraka, and they would hang out every day together. And Jeff Miller was a friend of mine who lived in Hawaii, the Metal Maniac, and he just said, "Send a tape down here because this guy King Curtis wants to see a tape of you guys." So we sent him our 6-minute promo tape. And the guy went crazy. I mean, he loved us. He just went off. He was like, you guys are the shit. I love your tag team. You guys look good. He was all over it. And next thing you know, he just started booking us. I mean, our first tour ever in 1989, I think it was when we went, we flew to New Zealand to work the British Bulldogs in a 2-week tour. So we went as the American Pitbulls versus the British Bulldogs, because, you know, New Zealand is a Commonwealth country, you know what I mean? So the Queen, I guess, owns that. So, you know, when the British Bulldogs came in, we actually sold out the Olympic Stadium. And that was 55,000 people. And I've never been in front of 55,000. I mean, the highest we ever been in front of was maybe 20,000 people for Vince. So when we went there, it was just like, wow, this is crazy, and in Australia, you know how it is. It's 7 women to 1 man. I mean, it was crazy. It was insane. Great tour.
Did Dynamite have his teeth back in at that point, or did he just never bother again?
Yes, he did. He would run up and down the hall screaming, especially me and my partner, because it was the first tour we ever went on. So of course we're on the phone calling everybody up from New Zealand, not knowing we got a phone bill of $900. And Don Morocco's screaming. He's like, "You fucking Pitbulls, you're fucking everything in sight in fucking New Zealand, every fucking girl." He's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Look, I understand the first tour you guys are ever been on. I'm going to do you a favor. I'm calling you Psychotic Spike, and I'm calling you Rabid Rex. That's going to be your names from now on, the Pitbulls. And I'm going to pay your hotel bill because I know you don't have the money." And he took care of it for us. And I'm telling you, man, after that, it was like things were just dropping in our lap. It was crazy because, like I said, we made friends with good people.
Well, and we were talking about this just before we started the show, and I said I do a weekly show with Don Morocco, speak to him all the time and everything, and you said how much he helped you in the early days. So you said King Curtis ended up getting you booked to New Zealand. Where does Don Morocco fall into all that?
Oh, he was on the show. Yeah, Don was actually on the tour with us. He was like one of the main events on that tour, but or semi-main, because he put us versus the Bulldogs as main event every night. And the first night, I remember the first night there, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, we were sitting in the locker room. We had our own locker room. Larry Sharp went across the hall to the British Bulldogs to get the finish. When he came back, his head was down and he was red. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And I guess him and Dynamite, they had a little button heads, back in the day or something. And come to find out, he's like, yeah, now it's rolling all you guys. And we're like, what are you talking about, And he's like, well, they're pissed off because they think you're trying to steal their gimmick. You know what I mean? And they're not too happy with me. So they said, go out there and they'll call the finish in the ring. Go out there, do 45 minutes and give it all you got. So, they gave us our test, the British Bulldogs. And to have them give us the test and we pass it was phenomenal. I mean, because they didn't think we were going to come to the ring at that point because we were young. I mean, this is our first tour ever. We've already seen the Bulldogs once in the WWF, so we know who they are. They know who we are, but they don't really know us yet. So they went to the ring first, and then we came out, and I think they were really shocked that we actually came out because they didn't think we were going to do it. But we were like, fuck it. You know what I mean? I don't care. I'll kick their ass. I don't give a shit. We'll do whatever we got to do. We were young. So, and we were in really good shape. So we went in there and we battled for 45 minutes, almost shoot. That's how stiff it was. It was just like Japan. And I didn't even know, but Dynamite had a broken collarbone and he still was in the ring working. That's how tough he is. I mean, it was getting rough. I mean, they were clotheslining us across the face. It was getting crazy. And 45 minutes went by, and next thing you know, they called the finish. We went home, and that night went to sleep, and got up late around 11 o'clock the next day, and we were hungover and just tired. And it was our first ever match like that, in front of 55,000 people, and so I went across the hall. I got up and I went right across the hall, and I'm thinking that's Larry Sharp's room because the door was open. Come to find out, it's the British Bulldogs. It was Davey Boy and Dynamite sitting there, and they're already drinking D.O. It's 11 a.m., and they're pounding the booze. And I walked in the room, and I swear I said to myself, fuck, I'm going to get my ass kicked now, because I just walked in their room, didn't knock, not thinking anything. And they're like, come here. And I'm like, what? I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to get fucked up. Here we go. They're like, where's your partner? Get his fucking ass in here. So they bring us in. Next thing you know, they start pouring drinks. They have a drink with us. They shook our hands. We said, sorry about last night, but we wanted to make sure you guys were the real deal, and, due to the fact that your gimmick is somewhat like our gimmick, we're bulldogs, you're pit bulls. We wanted to make sure this ain't, bullshit. Because if you're going to use that name, we want to make sure you're legit. And we passed the test, man. We started drinking at 11 o'clock with them, and it was a great 2-week tour. I learned so much in 2 weeks with those guys. It blows my mind.
Did they ever get you to drink wood grain alcohol? And also, did they ever rib you?
They never ribbed me. We were never ribbed by them. I guess that night, the first night was our rib, just to see if, because we were young. And they were trying to intimidate us, and they just wanted to make sure we were not pussies. You know what I mean? And,
yeah.
We were down with it. We understood. We've been through it. Larry and Charlie Fulton let us know, look, a lot of guys are going to put tests on you, But like I said, since the Wild Samoans loved us, and they would always, I don't care where they were, like a promoter would book them and say, who do you want to work? And they'll say the Pitbulls. Bring them in because we like them, So it was cool because, like I said, I knew Dwayne the Rock Johnson when he was like 9 years old. I seen him, you know what I mean? And like even Roman Reigns, I think he was a baby too when I ran into him when he was a kid. But they really didn't bring their kids around much back in the day when Alpha and Secret were on the road. The only time I'd run into the kids if I went to their house, and checked it out.
I'm going to move on then. And you end up wrestling for a company called, I'm going to have to read this, South Atlantic Pro Wrestling. Now, it was an independent that replaced, it was in Mid-Atlantic Carolina area, wasn't it? And it was Paul Jones was one of the co-owners, number one Paul Jones. But I've got to ask you this, because people might recognize this name as where Ken Shamrock got his start as Vince Torelli. And were you around for the Ken Shamrock and Nasty Boys confrontation?
We were there, and we saved his life. I don't care what anybody tells you. They could tell you what they want to tell you. Kenny called my room up that night, drunk. What room's the fucking Nasty Boys in? That's what he said. And I didn't go out that night. I stayed home. Me and my partner stayed in the hotel, and we slept. Until we got this phone call like 3 o'clock in the morning, and next thing you know, I hear all this banging and screaming, and next thing you know, there's somebody's banging on our door. So we open the door. It's a little black guy. He's a security guard. He couldn't be more than 5'2". And he's like fucking scared to death. And he's like, I cannot stop these guys. They're in there killing this guy. You got to go down and stop. So we're in our underwear. We just got done. We got out of bed. We run down, and we're on the outside of the hotel. So we're like 4 stories up outside the hotel. So we ran down the outdoor porch, I guess you might as well call it. And we kicked the door open, and we noticed like Brian Knobs was on the bed, flat out cold, knocked out cold. And Sags was pounding Kenny with the phone. So what he did was he dropped the phone, grabbed his ankle, and started dragging him to the front door. That's when we opened the door, and we seen him coming toward us. And he's like, I'm throwing him over the fucking guardrail. I'm throwing him over the railing. And he would have died. So that's when we went in, and we tackled him, and we stopped it. Thank God we stopped it. I mean, Kenny still had to go to the hospital. He was in the hospital for over 3 weeks. He broke his orbital bone here, almost lost that eye. He was almost blind in that eye. So it was a pretty bad scene because, like I said, back in the old days, you remember them old beige phones in the hotel rooms?
Yeah, the big old handsets with the rotary dial. I know exactly.
Yeah, so he picked that whole thing up and went bang and nailed him right here. And he fell right into a chair. And then that's when Sags, Sags is a big boy. He's not a small guy. I mean, the Nasty Boys are big and they're tall. And I'm telling you, he beat the shit out of him. But Kenny was drunk. I mean, he drank a whole bottle of Jack Daniels. So, I mean, you could be the most dangerous man in the world, but if you're drunk, you can't fight.
Do you even remember what kicked all that off, or were you just there for the aftermath and the fight itself?
I had heard it was over some chick, and the chick was pretty much a rat anyway. So it was like, I think Kenny was trying to stand up for her, and the Nasty Boys were pretty much bringing her stones and were, saying you're a fucking rat and get going. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm trying to think where I should go from here because there's so many questions and so little time, as there always is. We'll go straight to ECW, but it's Eastern Championship Wrestling. I didn't realise how early you guys, the Pitbulls, were in the company. I didn't realise that you were basically there practically at the beginning in 1992, like April. How did Todd Gordon? I'm assuming it was Todd Gordon who brought you in, or was it Eddie Gilbert who recommended you?
No, Todd Gordon brought it. Eddie Gilbert wasn't even working there yet.
Ah,
Yeah, see, we're the originals. We're from that area, so Todd Gordon knew us, and I knew Todd, and Todd, right away, he's like, I want you to work, and it was called Tri-State Wrestling Alliance. Okay, we didn't even become Eastern Championship Wrestling yet. So later on, we became Eastern Championship Wrestling. So we were still working for them, and then that's when later on we got a call to go to Japan, so we started going back and forth. But we're the originals. And people don't realize, they're like, oh, you had the belts like 2 or 3 times in ECW. I said, dude, you have no idea. We had the belts back in the day with the Destroyers when they had the belts. Okay. So we had the belts way when it was Tri-State Wrestling Alliance. I mean, we were the top guys in that company.
yeah. Where did Todd Gordon come from? I mean, because it was Joel Goodhart, wasn't it, at the Tri-State Wrestling?
It was Todd and Joel Goodhart were running that company.
Yeah. And how did? Sorry, I'm messing up the camera here. How did Tri-State end up just getting cut off? Was it because, as far as I can tell, Joel was paying too much money to bring all the talent in, and just couldn't make ends meet because he wanted to get all the big stars on the independents there?
You saw all the guys that were there. You know what I mean? I mean, when I was in the locker room and it was still Tri-State. I mean, they brought in. Like Ric Flair was there, Abdul the Butcher, Buddy Landell. I mean, you name it, Terry Funk. Everybody was there. And I remember we were doing a show in Philadelphia, and Ric Flair and Abdul the Butcher were in the back, and they were actually chilling with me and Anthony. We were just hanging out. Because we wrestled early. We had this big weapons brawl match. It was a battle royal, and we went over. They put the Pitbulls over. We went over, and we walked out. And I'll tell you real quick, that night I met Sandman. He was in the crowd watching. He was James Fullington. Wasn't even a wrestler yet. And he came up to me and goes, man, how'd you guys learn how to do that? So we went to wrestling school. We became wrestlers. And he's like, well, fuck, I want to do that. I said, well, get in touch with Joe Goodhart and go to his school. So that was the last time I seen Sandman. And then I went to Japan. And next thing you know, I come back from Japan. I had a knee surgery I had to get. So I was recovering, and I was only like about 26 years old at that point. And wouldn't you know it, I see ECW on TV one night. And I was just about healed up, all better. I recovered, rehabbed my knee. And I see ECW on TV, 2:00 in the morning. I'm like, holy shit, they made it to television. I got to make a phone call. So I called Sandman up right away. And I said, yo, I see that you're on there. You've got a big part. I want to come back. He's like, come on back. And at the time, my partner went to go work for Otto in the UK.
Germany, CWA, Catch.
Yes. So he was there working while I was recovering my knee surgery. And that's when I made the call. And next thing you know, they said, come to the arena that next Saturday. They said, come to the arena. I went in, and he looked at me, Paul Heyman looked at me and said, all right, man, let's go, get dressed, let's start working. And he would start putting me in the matches with guys. But I was working against Jimmy Snuka, Road Warrior Hawk. I mean, they had me in there with all these names, where they would put me and my partner against Taz and somebody else. I mean, it was crazy.
With all the people who used to come in, because for people who don't know, Eastern Championship Wrestling used to bring in a lot of the old stars from the WWF and a few from WCW as well. I wrote down a couple somewhere, I've lost them. Snooker, Salvatore Palomo, he was a big part of the original ECW. King Kong Bundy, Jim Neidhart, Tito Santana, Stan Hansen, Hawk, and of course, Don Morocco. Who were some of the guys, apart from Hawk and Snooker, or you can mention those two, that you worked with, and who were the great guys that you of years gone by who you learned a lot from?
All the older guys, like the Brain Busters and all them guys, they taught us so much, dude. I mean, we learned so much just by going out there and having that experience to wrestle the older guys. A lot of people were afraid to do that, and for us, it was like, shit, we want to work for the big companies. So we want to go there. So we went there and did what we had to do. And that's when, before you know it, New Japan was already on our ass. They were already watching us. So somebody must have told somebody, and Tokyo Joe comes down because not only did Paul Jones run that, George Scott was one of the bookers too.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought us in as baby faces. And I'll be honest with you, bro, we sucked. I couldn't cut a baby face promo to save my life, because we were natural heels. And, he kept telling us, they're baby faces. I don't know what to tell you. I would beg him every day that we did TV. I'm like, please, you have a little bit extra film left over. Let us cut a promo and we'll show you how good of heels we are. And finally, maybe about 3 weeks went by, and finally Paul Jones was just like, you know what? Just to shut you up, you know what I mean? Do your promo so we can get on with this, because the Nasty Boys were coming in, and they were only there for maybe a week already. So as soon as we cut the promo, I'm telling you, Paul Jones and George Scott just went like that. They grabbed their heads and they were like, wait a second. I didn't realize what we got here. Your promos are awesome for heels. So he's like, that's it. You guys are now the heels, and you're going to be in the stud stable with Robert Fuller and Matt Bourne. Okay, so we got that experience right there. Maniac, Matt Bourne, and Robert Fuller. Put us in the stud stable, made the Nasty Boys turn babyface. We were able to turn them babyface, and we became heels. And that's how it went, and it was awesome. And I loved working there. Working 6 nights a week, we just got so much experience. It was perfect.
You mentioned beforehand that you were recovering from a knee injury, and then you come back to ECW in 1994. You were a single for a very short while, aren't you? And then, no, in fact, not even a short while. You were there for maybe 6 months or something, a single as the Pitbull, I believe. And then Anthony comes back from Germany. And
but before he came back, they wanted to put the strap on me.
Oh, really?
I didn't want the belt. And I said, my honest opinions, I didn't want the belt. And I remember Paul Heyman was looking at me like, are you crazy? How could you tell me no? And I'm like, well, I said, my partner's in Germany. I said, when he gets back, he's coming back and we're going to be a tag team. That's what I am. He's like, okay, but for right now, your partner's not back yet. So let's roll with this. So he came up to me one night and he's like, look, I need you to do me one more favor. So I wrestled Road Warrior Hawk Mike, put him over, and then that night, after that match, he came up to me, Paul Heyman, and said, look, I need to come to New York this week, and we're going to cut some promos. I didn't have any idea what he was doing or what he was, what we're going to be talking about. I just remember going to New York, cutting promos, and he's like, okay, JT Smith has the television title, but at the time, JT was injured. He hurt his ankle pretty bad. So he was on crutches and everything. And he's like, I need you to come in here, cut a promo, and I'm going to put the belt on you. And I'm like, what? And he's like, you're going to be the next TV champ. And I'm like, fuck, I've only been here a couple of months and you're already putting the belt on me, because I was just, every week he would see me and I'd get bigger and bigger and bigger, because I was just lifting my ass off, because I wanted that TV belt, because at first I didn't want it, but then I said to myself, look at all the guys who had that television belt, just to be in that category and have my name on there, and my partner. Anthony won the TV title also when I had broken my neck. So he even had a run with the TV title. We're talking about Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho, all these top guys that had that television belt, man, that are unbelievable workers. And we're in that category. So I was very happy for that.
And then, obviously, your partner comes back from Germany, and it was in a match with Taz, I believe, wasn't it? And he now, this is very off the top of my head. He comes back after, I think you lose to Taz, don't you, like a dog collar match or something, and then you both beat down Taz in '94. Is that right?
Well, Taz had to do the job for me right in the middle of the ring.
Oh.
But then what happened was, that was our angle, but we continued the angle because at the time Anthony came back, I knew I had to drop the title. And at the time, Paul Heyman said, well, I have an idea. See this kid, Mikey Whipwreck? And I'm like, yeah, I noticed he's a ring crew, but now you got him working, and he's coming out to this the song "You're a Loser,
Yeah,
Baby."
Beck. Yeah, it was Beck,
It
wasn't
was
it?
Beck, yeah, and it just made sense because he was like a little kid and he couldn't wrestle. I mean, he could wrestle good. Don't get me wrong, but like he wasn't believable at the time, you know. So I dropped a strap because Taz interfered in my match. So I went to kick Taz. I went over the top rope, nutted myself, went back in the ring, and then that's when Mikey ran up to me, covered me 1, 2, 3. He's the new television champion. He don't even want the belt. You know, the whole time he's giving like, I don't know if you saw it with him and Mick Foley when they became tag team champs.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't even want to be a champ. You know, you could have the belt. He was afraid to wrestle because everybody beat the shit out of him, you know?
I'm going to give you a bit of a game now. It's a name association, and I'm going to give you a sentence or a description, and you tell me who best fits that. And maybe if there's a little story to go with it, please throw it in. And the first one is funniest person in the locker room, and it could be any locker room.
Whew. I have to say Sandman. With his gimmick, he's drunk, he drinks beers all day, and by the time the show starts, he's already got 30 into him, and he's just fucking hilarious, man. He just makes me laugh.
I've been told a couple of times that the beer thing was a gimmick, and he was actually always on the jack.
He liked vodka.
Or on the vodka, excuse me.
Yes, he was the vodka man.
Well, this might be Sandman as well, but last man standing at the bar.
Ric Flair.
Oh, right.
Absolutely. We were in North Carolina many, many times. We were out, me and my partner, and we were drinking with Rick because he was with NWA at the time. We were still with George Scott and Paul Jones, and we were trying to, every time NWA was in North Carolina, Charlotte, we went right there. We went right to the building because I was talking to Magnum TI all the time. You know, I'm like, we want to come in, we want to come in. And he's looking at us. We were like little kids to him. Yeah. You know, you guys we don't even have facial hair yet. He's like, you're too young. And I'm like, well, Vince wants us. I don't know what to tell you. I said, we'd rather work for you. You know, we want to come work for you guys, you know?
Well, you actually, sorry for interrupting. You actually do a tryout with WCW. I've got it in 1991 against the Steiner brothers. And what a pair to have a tryout match against.
Well, yeah, they happened to call us up. It was a weekend and we weren't doing nothing that weekend. They said, we want you to work. So come down to Atlantic City, you and your partner. We went in there. They actually tugged me up with Sid Vicious. So me and Sid went against the Steiners. Mm-hmm. Anthony, they split us up. Anthony wrestled Matt Bourne when he was when he was the Lumberjack.
Yeah, Big Josh.
Big Josh. So, yeah, that night was pretty crazy because I got to tag up with Sid. The Steiner brothers beat us, so Sid at the end of that match picked me up, power bombed me in the middle of the ring, left me laying there, and that was our, debut for WCW, and they were pretty cool with us, like they liked how we looked, and we had to look, and they liked us. It was just, we were in ECW at the time,
Who was the person who would have said yes or no to bringing you in at that time?
We were talking to Terry Taylor. I think Kevin Sullivan was still there. But we were in ECW at the time, and we were doing New Japan and ECW. We were lucky like that. We were like Sabu. We would do like 52 weeks a year in Japan, and then the rest of the time we were home. So we were like, not many, only a few guys in ECW had that gimmick like Sabu did. He was able to go to Japan and then come back. And that always pissed Taz off because Taz never been to Japan yet. And he was, in the company, and he was up Paul's ass. I mean, he was right there. They're both from New York. So you had your New York clique, and then you had your Philadelphia clique in our company.
The next one I will give you is the wrestler who didn't go to the laundry as often as they should have done.
Balls Mahoney.
Thank you. Biggest stooge for the dirt sheets.
Wow. I'd probably say Tommy Dreamer.
Oh, really? I've never heard that name before. I've heard that Paul Heyman used to talk to people and funneled information, but I've never heard Tommy before.
I'm just guessing because I know Paul did, but I'm thinking Tommy probably did also.
Yeah, quite possibly. Most dangerous situation you ever found yourself in?
Wow. That's crazy. I would say the dangerous situation I was ever in was like we were talking about earlier, the New Zealand trip and the British Bulldogs.
Yeah.
That was our first trip ever out of the States. I never got on a plane and went out of the country before. It was the first time.
So you never had any issues with, fans bum rushing the ring trying to attack you or anything? Was that because ECW? I don't think that ever happened.
No, that happened with us. We were in Florida working Public Enemy.
Oh.
And we were doing a double dog collar match in Florida. And next thing you know, all the fans jumped in the ring. They actually attacked the ring, jumped in the ring. The ring freaking fucking collapsed. So I'm tied up to Rocco. Anthony was with Rocco and I was with Johnny Brunch. And I remember I was just trying to get away from it because I didn't know who was friendly and who was foe at the time. All I remember is I was underneath a pile of chairs outside the ring and just trying to protect myself with the chair over my head because all these chairs were getting thrown at us. So like the fans were just going crazy because, like I said, we were the heels in that particular match. And I remember I started feeling a tug and I'm like, holy shit, somebody's pulling me out and they're pulling me out. And it's this guy, he's got to be 500-600-pound fat fucker. And I'm like, I don't know who this guy is, but he's pulling me closer to him. So as I'm getting closer, I'm getting my arm ready, bro. I'm like, it's cocked, it's loaded, and it's ready to go. I'm gonna nail this guy as soon as I get close enough. Thank God Rocco grabbed my arm and said, no, he's a good guy. And he saved my ass. And we ended up getting back in the ring. I don't know what happened after that, but the match was over. It was just a fucking kibosh. That's how crazy it was.
How did the chair throwing start? Did somebody ask for a chair, or did a fan just do it spontaneously?
They just did it. But then, normally, they did it before when Terry Funk and Cactus Jack was in the ring, and they were throwing. This is at the arena. I mean, these fans were just crazy. They just started throwing chairs in, and next thing you know, it was like the ring broke because the fans never came in the ring before. Now I'm like watching these people jump in the ring. I mean, literally, the whole ring was packed with people. And it was so many people that the ring collapsed. The ring could not hold that weight. And it went right to the ground. And I'm just glad we weren't in the ring when that happened because who knows what could happen.
Yeah, or even if you're on the outside and it fell towards you, goodness knows what could have happened.
Yeah.
I'll give you a few more then. The stiffest / most reckless wrestler you ever were in the ring with?
Well, I'm going to say I broke my neck. I was coming back. I was 100%, and I came back, and I remember Paul Heyman said, you're going to work Rob Van Dam tonight. And I'm like, oh, man, this is my first night back. You know what I mean? And you're already putting me with Van Dam, and I'm like, this is freaking crazy. You know what I mean? I just got back. I still haven't gotten the cobwebs out of my head yet. And I was nervous because, like I said, I don't know what could have happened. You know what I mean? Because I know Rob, look, I never worked him before, but I would watch him work, and he looked so stiff. But then once I got in the ring with him, he took care of me, and he actually hurts himself more than he hurts the guys. So, you know what I mean? He'll hurt his own self just so you don't get hurt.
Yeah. I'm going to give you this one then. Most memorable backstage fight.
There's a couple of them. I'll give you two. First one was New Jack against Dancing with Dudley, one of the original Dudley boys. It was a different, because we came up with the gimmick. It was actually Raven. We were the Philly clique, so we would sit around and talk all the time. And Raven would write little notes on a napkin if we're out at a nightclub or something, because everything in his mind they'd put on TV. I mean, he's a genius when it comes to gimmicks, and it was pretty cool because we got to work with him, and I got to hang out with Raven every day because he lived in Philadelphia. So we go to the gym together every single day, and every night we were end up out together. So we were at clubs every night.
And the fight, New Jack and Dancer was Dudley, what was that all about?
They got in an argument. They had started in the ring, and I guess New Jack came in the back of the locker room, and he had his nightstick. And then when the Dudley boy came in, dancing with Dudley, he was like the Indian Dudley. New Jack blasted him in the head with a nightstick. I even felt bad. I was like, Jack, why'd you do that to the guy? I mean, he's a little dude. You should have just gotten a fight with him and beat him up that way. You didn't have to bust his head open. That one, and then there was another one when I think it was Bubba and my partner got a little like confrontation. They were arguing about something. Anthony got in a fight with somebody, and I think Bubba went to grab Anthony and pull them back. I think him and Jack were getting in an argument, and I wasn't there. I was at my house. I still had the halo on my head, and yeah, we were pissed off about that because Bubba grabbed Anthony. See, instead of Bubba grabbing New Jack, he grabbed Anthony. Then Anthony was just like, what the fuck are you doing grabbing me? You know what I mean? Like, you should grab him, not me. And they almost went blows to blow. But at the time, Ravishing Rick Rude was with us because he was bringing me back and against Shane Douglas and all that stuff. So Rick Rude pretty much tried to break everything up.
I actually spoke to Blue Meanie a few weeks ago, and he mentioned Anthony versus New Jack, and it ended up being somewhat of a stalemate and no one really getting the upper hand. But I didn't know that you weren't there for that. But the only thing
I was very, very, very close with New Jack. People don't realize, like a lot of people don't even know that. Okay, me and New Jack were like this. I mean, he would call me once, twice a week just to check in to make sure I'm okay. That's how Jack is. Class act.
Yeah. I think New Jack, there's two sides of a coin with New Jack, and not the same coin. There's the absolute maniac, and there's a very, very nice guy as well, because I think, who else did I speak to? Francine, and just had really misunderstood, wacky and everything, but he was a lovely guy.
Very nice. Like I said, I never knew. I didn't realize until he started calling me, because we were starting to check up on each other. When everybody started dying, it was getting bad. And I would always call him Jerome because we were so tight. His New Jack gimmick was a gimmick. I mean, he really was a nice guy. I stayed at his place, he cooked for me. The guy's a hell of a cook, so he was a great dude. I mean, it's a shame that everybody believed the gimmick, which is good. He fooled everybody. I had guys call me like Balls Mahoney, Axel Rotten. Oh, New Jack wants to kick my ass. Can you help me out? I'm like, dude, you're grown men. You handle your own business. I'm not getting involved in your shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's how I left it,
Okay, I'm going to ask you a few more then. Biggest ladies man.
Biggest ladies man?
Yes.
It's the Pitbulls. we, dude, I don't care, from sea to shining sea, from the Pacific to the Atlantic Ocean, we tapped every ass we possibly could find. Okay.
Yeah. Who was more picky, or no pickiness, just whoever turned up?
Oh no, we were picky. They had to be good looking girls. we didn't go with the ugly girls.
That's a fine. A fine answer. Biggest ribber.
Biggest ribber. Got to be the Wild Samoans. Samu and Yokozuna, Rodney. They were good with the ribs because they got Anthony real good one night. I stayed in. I had a headache. They were at a bar drinking with Vader. It was like it was in the early 90s. And he happened to drink some of Vader's VO, and he grabbed the bottle and went, blah, 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 and Vader went, pop, knocked him out with an open hand. That's when Vader was a mean cat, man. Because I went to Japan later, I called him Pops because he's the nicest guy in the world. But back then, early 90s, you're talking, he just got done pro football. He's mean as shit, dude. So, and him and Bigelow are a tag team, and it's like, man, I'm like, me and Anthony were like, I hope we don't have to work these guys tonight. You know what I mean? Like, shit. Because they were always pissed off. They always had heat with each other. They were always bumping heads because they were two of the big men, in Japan.
I'll give you two more then. Travel Lodge, what is the weirdest single sight you ever saw in the Travel Lodge?
Oh. Travelodge was crazy, brother. It was insane. I mean, we would go upstairs and we would have our rooms, and then we would get in elevators and come downstairs, take the elevator downstairs. The whole downstairs was packed. You couldn't even walk in this lobby. That's how packed it was. And I'm talking chicks from I'm talking from the wall, the bottom floor to the ceiling, there was broads. So we would just come down in the elevator, grab one or two chicks, and go right back up. And then what freaked me out one night is I was in there and some guy happened to be there with his girl. I'm not going to get into names. I don't want to bring names up. But the girl wanted to go mess. The girl actually wanted to mess around with Anthony, and the guy didn't care. He just wanted to watch. So next thing I know, I walk in the room and see this chick going down on my partner, and I'm like, what the? And then this guy standing there, I'm like, what the fuck is this? But it was insanity. I mean, we ended up. I mean, I went there one time at the Travel Lodge, and somebody stole my car. So when I came back to the Travel Lodge, my car was gone. But I knew so many people in Philadelphia. It only took me like 2 hours. I found out who stole the car. That's how fast it was. And then I got on the phone and I would do what I had to do to get my car back.
This reminds me of an interview that New Jack gave years ago. He said he was messed up. He was in the Travel Lodge and he'd taken a bodybuilder girl back with him to the room. And he said, okay, you can carry on. You know the story.
He told me this. He said, Gar, oh my God, he's laughing. I'm like, what's so fucking funny? He's like, man, you know that girl you hooked me up with? I'm like, yeah. Because she was a bodybuilder. He goes, she came out of the fucking bathroom with a towel wrapped around her waist. And it was only her back. Like she wasn't front, like facing me. He goes, and I'm looking and I'm like, he thought that was me. Like from behind, it looked like I was in his bedroom with a towel wrapped around me, but it was the chick. It was fucking hilarious. I was laughing my ass off. But it was true. The girl looked from behind, and she was so big at the time, he thought it was me. He was flipping out, man. He's like, oh my God, Gary, I thought you were in my room. I couldn't believe it.
Did he wake up and think that maybe you and him had some sort of intimate moment over the evening and he just hadn't realized?
Yeah, he was, because let me tell you, bro, he would party, man. And he would beg me, come to my room. I knew if I went to that room, I was never getting out of it. You know what I mean? So it was like, look, I said at the time I was married. I said, I got to go home. I mean, even if I showed up at home at 5 a.m., at least I showed up at home. So I had to at the time. So if anything, that kind of like saved my ass there, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty much the end of that bit of the game. I will move on to questions elsewhere. And one of them is, did you ever get privy to when Extreme Championship Wrestling came about from Eastern, the NWA titles thrown down, etc.? We all know the story. Did you ever see the Paul Heyman, Dennis Carluzzo issues? And did you ever try to get booked with Dennis at the time? Or was that just a no-go because you were with ECW?
No, I would work for Dennis all the time. We were working for Dennis and working for Todd Gordon back when it was Tri-State Wrestling Alliance. So Dennis Carluzzo ran the NWA, and yeah, I think it was NWA.
Yeah,
out of New Jersey, and he liked us, and we were always there, and he always took care of us, and I can't say nothing bad about him.
No, absolutely. Paul Heyman, first time you met Paul Heyman. And how do you think of him as a booker, and when was the first time you realised what Paul Heyman was all about as far as constantly being like overly secretive or not answering the phone or etc.? You know the stories.
I noticed when Anthony came in and Paul would always come to the arena. He had no idea what we were doing. So he would sit at a table, you know, and he don't even have the cards set up yet. So I remember in the beginning, I would go up to him and say, what are we doing tonight? And he's like, I don't know yet. I haven't figured it out yet. And I was just like, all right, you know, that's cool. So we got to the point where, you know, we were, you know, we had enough, like we knew that we were okay, you know, so we didn't give a shit. We're like, you know what, Paul, I'm not going to play your game and sit there at the table every 10 minutes and go over there and ask you, because that's what a lot of guys did. They couldn't wait to find out what they were doing because they wanted to get on it beforehand. I didn't care because I already knew how to work. It didn't matter to me. I'm going to call the finish, maybe one spot, and time to go home, and that's it. I don't sit there and do A, B, C, D, E, F, G like a lot of guys do.
Mm.
I like to talk out there.
Yeah. Did you ever get like bereavement fares or have to pretend to be someone else to get a cheap airline ticket or anything like that?
No, we had friends. I had a friend that worked for United Airlines, and this guy, Mark Mosetter was his name, and or Robert was his name. He was a very cool kid, man. He was a nice guy. He loved us. Like anytime, like we always flew United because he worked at United. So if I had tickets to go somewhere, I'd bring it right to him, his counter, and he'd bump us up to first class, or business class, depending on where we were going, and he would always, like, if we had a flight, like say for instance, I wanted to get out of town for a week. I would tell my old lady I'm going to go work. Instead, I go get to see him. He gives me a ticket. I go to South Beach, and we're in Miami hanging out on the beach for a week. You know what I'm saying?
Good man.
Just to get away.
Yeah, good man, definitely. One more Paul Heyman question is, it's very famous that, the bounce checks, he didn't always have the money, but that wasn't just happening in the last year or two. I believe that was happening from almost the beginning, just less frequently. Did you ever have to have words to, get a payoff back that bounced?
We only once. We gave him our 2-week notice because we were going to WCW. Terry Taylor, Diamond Dallas Page, Raven, Kevin Sullivan. There were about 5 guys, and Bischoff was on the phone. They called me up and said, look, we want to bring you in WCW for, I think it was the Christmas pay-per-view. It was in December.
It'd be Starcade then.
It's the Steiners.
Right. And
we're giving you the straps. And we're like, yes, absolutely. So we gave Paul our notice, and he said, okay, you guys are the last guys. I mean, we pretty much stayed to the end. Okay, I'm not going to lie. I mean, you got to remember Eddie Guerrero, Perry Satt, all them guys were already gone. I was going to be in Raven's flock, but I had to get my knee surgery. So I had to sit back, and I waited and stayed with ECW. And like I said, once, we found out they wanted us, once they found out they wanted us, we went, and it was over, man. It was done.
There's a slight Skype issue, I think, coming through, so I'll just edit this bit out. No, sorry, we'll carry on. So what happened with the WCW thing then? Because I didn't realize that. Are we talking about like 97, 98 time?
Yeah. We were getting ready to go. So we were doing the pay-per-view in Pittsburgh, and it was Anthony versus Taz, and I was going to be in the corner. Taz called me up every single night that week, nervous, because we're going to be on live television doing a pay-per-view. And he's like telling me, listen, Gar, I don't know if it's going to be a 20-minute match. I don't know if it's going to be a 2-minute match. I said, listen, Taz, I don't care if it's a 3-minute match. I'm still getting paid the same amount of money. It don't make a bit of difference to me. Yeah, but I just don't want you guys to be pissed off. No, what it came down to is he didn't want us to beat his ass on live television, and there's no way of stopping us because we were the baddest motherfuckers there as far as tag teams. You're going to fight us, you're fighting both of us, not just one of us. So I had to keep telling him, look, we're going to be fine. So we got to the building that night, and Paul came up to us and goes, yo, everything's cool, right? Everything's cool, right? We're like, sure. He goes, all right, so you do the pay-per-view, then 90 days later, I'll get that check out to you guys. And I'm like, no. Here's where it stopped. I said, listen, I'm not going to see no money. I know you're not, I'm going to WCW. You're not going to pay us. So you're going to pay us tonight, or we're not going out there to work, or we'll go out there and just beat his ass. So it's your choice, Paul. I said, you leave it up to you. I'm leaving it up to you. Use your discretion. I'm not waiting for my money. I want to get paid for being here tonight, and I want my pay-per-view money that night as well, because I know I'm never going to see it. So he did agree, paid us. I know he wasn't very fond about it, but he had to do it, because otherwise in that time period, we were in the driver's seat. You know, he needed us to go out there and put Taz over and make him look like Superman because he was pushing Taz. But at the time, you know, we knew we just got a call from fucking WCW. So, you know, we already gave him a 2-week notice. So he knew that we didn't care. So he paid us that night and we had no problems. He never owed us any money. He owed a lot of guys money. I know guys up to 20 G's, 30 grand he owed.
I've never heard that you were going to WCW, but you never ended up on WCW television. So what happened in the interim period between that?
What happened was we were getting ready to go. I mean, it was more or less, we talked to Bischoff. The following week, he's like, I'm going to call you. You call me Monday, and we're going to get your tickets arranged, and we want you to fly down. He had asked us a couple of questions. He's like, are you willing to move to Atlanta, or are you willing to move to Florida? We were like, no problem. We'll move to Florida. We have no problem doing that. I understand you want your guys close, and I have no big deal. We'll do it. But before I knew it, Vince called us back. So we went back up, worked against the Headbangers.
Yep.
Came home, and we're still waiting. Next thing you know, ECW was bought by Vince, and Vince bought WCW as well. So Bischoff called, when we called Bischoff to get our flights, he goes, guys, sorry. He goes, but I'm not allowed to sign any new talent right now. Nobody. Because Vince McMahon just bought us out.
Well, there's actually in '98, that was 3 years away from WCW being bought by Vince. I think that Eric Bischoff was out of the company or by '99. So
since we were so upset, you know, then we got a call by King Curtis to go work for Mark Lewin in Australia. So we were like, fuck it, you know, we ended up moving to Melbourne, Australia. And we stayed there. I was there for 9 months. And we had the tag team titles there. The Bruise Brothers were there. The Samoans were there. The Headhunters were there. The big heavy set guys that do the big moonsault. Because we worked against them all over Japan. And Mark Lewin put the belts on me and my partner. You know, so we were doing Good Morning Adelaide, Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney. We were doing all them Good Morning shows, and dude, we were hammered, man. We were hammered.
Dude, forgive me for asking this, but I have been led to believe that you and Anthony, back in the old days of ECW, were two guys who could get you anything you needed, sort of thing. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. You want something, we'll have it for you. I mean, we noticed that the first time he went to work for Vince. You know, he's sitting at a table, you know, there's a line of guys and they're all getting steroids, you know, right there in front of us. We're like, what the hell? And they're banging these guys hard, man, hitting them with a lot of money. You know, and I remember back in the day, Ron Simmons came up to us and, you know, introduced himself, and we were like, nice to meet you. And because everybody came up to us because we were going to go work for Vince. I mean, like I said, Vince wanted us. And like I said, they were like, he's pounding us for steroids. And we're like, shit, dude, I'll bring you a fucking, next time we come up, we came up with a case, a luggage bag full of juice. And we just sold it to all the guys. That's what we did.
So basically, when you were in the WWF, we were thinking, damn, the Doctor's making more than half the wrestlers here.
Yeah. It was like they knew they were getting paid well. You know, Vince was paying everybody good back then in the 80s. You know, that's when Hulk Hogan was there and making millions. You know, I met him when I was 18 years old, Hulk Hogan. You know, he brought me on his he had a bus, you know, and he was like, you could have this. You know, he wasn't a dick at all. He was very nice to me, man. He was cool. He heard of us. I introduced myself. He goes, Pitbulls, I heard of you guys. A lot of older guys talking about you guys. You know, you're the next coming thing, you know, and I'm like, I don't know. I said, I hope so, you know, but I was like, I want a bus, man. He goes, you can get a bus. You never know. But he you know, instead of burying you and say, hit the road, kid, you know, you ain't shit. No, he stopped what he was doing and said, come on, man, come with me, you know, and he's got jeans, cowboy boots, cut off sleeve shirt. I mean, he was a monster then. That's how big, when I looked at him, I couldn't believe it. I said, holy shit, that's Hulk Hogan. He's big.
So a brief period, you hooking Hulk Hogan up then.
Yeah.
Yeah. When did the law catch up with you then? As far because this was in the ECW days, wasn't it?
Yeah, we had gotten in trouble because I happened to have like an LB, a pound of weed in my basement, which was junk crap. I just had it sitting there, and somebody called me up. A friend of mine from he was out of town. I was in Philadelphia getting a tattoo at the time, and he called me up and said, "Oh, can I get that?" And I'm like, "Dude, I don't even want it. You can have it. You know what I mean? Or I'll give it to you. Give me a couple $100." And that's what I did. And wouldn't you know it, 2 years. It took 2 years for them to get a judge for them to come and get us. That's how stupid it was.
Right.
It was ridiculous. I mean, when I got arrested, I was like, I don't even know what I'm in here for. I had no idea. Then my lawyer said something you did in 1996. And I'm like, what? That's 2 years ago. What are you talking about? Like, I didn't understand. It was a joke, but they made it federal, which put us in a level 12, which still is bullshit. I mean, the most they could have did was give us 18 months in jail, and they weren't going to do that. So they gave us probation. And if anything, that kept us good for 3 years. We had to be on our toes for 3 years. But, in the meantime, as well as I do, look at all these guys that work for Vince. There's guys that rob Burger Kings. There's guys that rob cruise ships. There's guys that robbed fast food places, burglaries. I mean, what we did was a slap on the wrist. But everybody tried to make it sound like it was so devastating, and we were like kingpins and this shit. It's not the truth. It was all bullshit, man. It was all bullshit. It was just because we were on TV, and maybe I banged some cop's wife and didn't know it, and the cop found out, and he was from New Jersey, and he was trying to get us in trouble. That's the only thing I can think of.
Before I move on to the main event, as it were, and then we'll close down the podcast, and I will thank you very much for your time. One person who says that when they were briefly in ECW in 1995, they immediately hooked up with you and your partner, and it was Steve Austin. Memories of Steve Austin.
Great guy. Great. He was so grounded. He wasn't even stone cold yet. He would come to my house and stay at my house. My house was maybe 10 blocks from the arena. So we would always go to my house first, and we would, get lit, party up a little bit, and then we all would jump in the cars, and 10 blocks down the road, there's the arena.
How was he? So he wasn't like, big star, I'm from WCW, etc. He was just like, I'm one of the boys, I'm here to work.
He was one of the Hollywood Blondes at the time.
Yeah.
And what happened was he was in... Steve, he had tore his tricep, and they fired him. He tore his tricep in Japan, didn't even go back to work yet, and they called him on the phone and said, "You're fired." So he was so pissed at Bischoff, he was just like, "You motherfucker, you fired me." And at that point, like, nobody knew what was going on. And then Paul went over to Steve and said, "Listen, you got to cut a promo. Okay, we need you to cut a good promo. We're going to let you roll with it and go off on anybody you want to go off on." He cut such a good promo on Eric Bischoff and killed him that Vince, right off the bat, as soon as Vince and Jim Ross saw that promo, that's when they called Steve Austin up immediately and said, "Well, you can come and do us." So, I mean, we had him for a little bit, and then bang, he went right to WWF.
Yeah, I mean, as you said before, you always knew how to cut a heel promo. Did you ever give Steve Austin any advice? Because he was good in WCW, but it was when he went to ECW and had real motivation. That's when the true greatness came out.
Well, he said that night, he's like, "Man, I got to cut this, like, I don't know, they want a 20-minute, 30-minute promo, and I got to go off." And I said, "I don't know what to do." And I just remember looking at him and telling him, I said, "Steve," I said, "just tell him the truth. That's what Ric Flair always told us, and that's how we got over his heels. Go in there and tell them what you did the night before. It's the truth. It's going to flow right out of your mouth easily. It's not like you have to remember lines. Just go in there and tell the truth." And that's exactly what he did.
Exactly. Exactly what it did. And the rest is history, as they say.
It was. Because they didn't know what to do with him until... I remember he told me he went home, and he was home for like 2 or 3 weeks, and they were calling him the
ringmaster.
the ringmaster, and they couldn't come up with a name. And finally, he told me, which is a lot of people probably already heard this, but he said his wife gave him a cup of tea or something and said, you better drink that tea before it gets stone cold. Mm-hmm. He looked up and was like, stone cold? That's what I'm going to use. And that's what he did. He went to Vince and told him that. Now, usually, between you and me, Vince would say no because he didn't think of it. But Jim Ross was so for it, and the Attitude Era. I mean, after One Night Stand, that's when the Attitude Era started. ECW started that. We made Vince change the way they worked over there. And Steve Austin was the top guy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there was Steve Austin, there was Shane McMahon, who was a big fan. There was Vince Russo, who used to watch a lot of times. So a lot of ECW ideas were stolen and taken over to WWF and maybe refined. That's for people's own personal taste. I will give you now the finale of the show, and then I will thank you for your time. Or if you want to do a bit more, we can do. But I will call it the firing line, as I always do, and I'm just going to give you some names. You tell me what you think about them. I imagine you're going to think they're all great guys because I don't court the controversy that most people do. But the first one is, and if there's a story involved, please do tell me. The first one is Bam Bam Bigelow.
Went to school with him. He went to the Monster Factory. He got out of there before we did. As we were just getting in, he was getting out. Larry was going to Japan with him a lot. Scotty was a great person.
Best big man ever?
I would think so. Him and Yokozuna were very, very, for their size, they can move like 200-pound guys, especially Rodney. I mean, Rodney was 3-something. I mean, the last time I saw Rodney before he passed away, he had to be 900 pounds. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, he died the day before he was going to main event the very first wrestling show I ever went to. Unfortunately, it was going to be him and Greg Valentine.
Yeah, it was a shame. Like I said, they already took, when I ran into him, he told me that New York took his license away from him.
Yeah,
they said he was unhealthy to wrestle. So.
Yeah, that's why he didn't go to WCW, because WCW wanted to bring him over as well, but he couldn't get a license in New York. And if you don't get a license in New York, you can't get it anywhere, basically, it seems.
Yeah, true.
Too Cold Scorpio.
One of the best workers in the business. Okay, I don't care what anybody says. He's very underrated. He's amazing in the ring. The stuff he can do, the flips, the 450. I mean, he was the first to do these things. He made it to now these young kids today are going in the ring doing some crazy ass shit. You know what I'm saying? That we wouldn't even think about doing back then.
Yeah, and he was a heavyweight as well. Not, he wasn't like 190.
No, he was over 200 pounds. And I would tag up with him a lot in Japan. And we would go creeping all the time in Japan. We had a blast.
Tatanka, Chris Chavez, you worked with him early.
Yeah, I was with him with Vince Torelli. He was called Chris Chavis, and he was also in South Atlantic Pro Wrestling. Like I said, it was a breeding ground for Vince's guys. I mean, we were going to go to Vince. That's why we were there. The only reason why we didn't was New Japan came down and got us. The Tokyo Joe came down, looked at us, and then he would send like the Malenko brothers in, the Fantastics in from Japan, and had us work against it. And this way he was able to check us out and see how we worked against these guys. And then he would come and visit and say, okay, I need more suplexes. I need more of this. I need more of that to get that style down in Japan. And I was like, fine, I'm down with it. And when the time came, they said, we want to bring you to Japan. We're like, awesome. Vince was going to sign us. And I said, look, if you can match the money that New Japan's given us, we'll come to you. And I won't go to Japan. And Vince said, no, you're not ready to make that kind of money yet. I said, well, Japan thinks otherwise. So we went to Japan. And I figured, you know what? There's so many guys in that locker room that haven't even been to Japan yet. And I'm already getting that chance to go. And I haven't even done anything yet. I said, if anything, it's just going to make us worth more money. So that's why we did it.
Yeah, absolutely. Axel and Ian Rotten, two pretty dissimilar people, I think, actually.
We had a good run with them. We had Loser Leave Town in ECW, and we had to put the beating on them. They were done, so they split them apart. And that was because the Pitbulls beat them.
Well, it was Axel Rotten stayed, and Ian Rotten. That's the last major thing he did, and then he ended up doing like a load of hardcore stuff down in
He
AWA,
came back.
whatever.
I think he came back and they did that Muay Thai glass.
Yeah, Taipei, the Taipei glassing, yeah.
And they had them go against each other because they would beat the shit out of each other, those two.
Mm.
Yeah, they were really hardcore. They were before their time.
Yeah.
I would say.
Perry Saturn.
Perry was nuts. Okay. He was always the quietest one in the room. Come to find out, he tells me later, I was quiet because I was fucked up. You know, I thought fucking Perry was a straight line, dude, because he was always with Taz. Because he would stay, like me and my partner ran the ECW school in Philadelphia. Taz and Perry Saturn ran the ECW school out of New York. So, you know, that was why there was a New York clique and a Philly clique. Mm. And Perry was always quiet. And I remember the first time they came in. I mean, as soon as they came in, usually Paul would put the Pitbulls against every new tag team that came in to the building that night, and they would do the job for us, of course. I met Perry and I met Cronus, and they were both really cool guys, and they could work their asses off. You understand? So, being like me and my partner were good as adapting to other people's style. So if they were Japanese, we had no problem working. If they were Mexican, we had no problem working because we would adapt our style to their style, and we always had great matches.
Yeah. And what about John Cronus as well? I think he definitely had a strange personality style, so I hear.
Perry was, Cronus was crazy, legit crazy. Like, he didn't really know much, but he did gymnastics and stuff like that when he was young. I didn't know. I'm looking at a guy that's 320 pounds that could do cartwheels and flips, and I pull him aside and I was like, what do you do? Like, how'd you learn how to do it? And he told me, and I said, well, then let's call some spots. I mean, if China is throwing a guy in the corner and doing flip, 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 back elbow, why can't you do it? And he was like, I can do it. I was like, well, then let's start. And that's when we opened up the eliminators a little bit. Like, they got to the point where now we could do some good tag matches because they have a good tag team to work with, and we would go around all over the states and just crush it with the eliminators all the time.
This is supposedly the funniest guy in the locker room, Brian Lee.
Oh, Brian Lee was crazy, man. Well, nicest guy in the world. He would do anything for you. He used to be at the hotel with no car. He'd call me up and be like, yeah, I need some liquor, man. So I'd go pick up some booze for him, and I'd bring it to the hotel for him and stuff like that. Yeah. It was a 10-minute ride for me, so it was never a big deal.
Missy Hyatt.
Love her. Cool as hell. She managed us at one point. We've had a lot of managers in our time in the business, and Missy was one of them, and she was a good manager.
Yeah. Robert Fuller.
Great. Great person to learn the business from because he's old school. And he liked us. I mean, he would even take us. That one time we went to Tennessee for 2 weeks. Like, we left South Atlantic with Robert Fuller and Matt Bourne, and the U.S. Mail was with us at the time. And we went all over Tennessee for, I think it was for Jarrett. And we sold out every single house because they brought us in the USWA, that little TV studio there. And we just kicked everybody's ass. It was pretty cool. It was good. It was good.
Yeah. I've got to ask this. Robert Fuller, Too Cold Scorpio. Who's the winner?
As far as workers, or
as far as in the trouser department?
The trousers? Oh, wow. Robert Fuller has him beat, if you can believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, he would get it. He put it this way: Robert was so huge, he'd have to sit down because all the blood would be down in his cock, and he would get lightheaded. And I remember just sitting there looking at his girl like, I don't know how you could take that. Like, you got to be fucking nuts. I mean, because Robert would literally go, boys, I got to sit down. I'm getting dizzy. Funny.
I believe it was a top wrist lock. That was what he would do. He put a top wrist lock on himself.
Yes, and he could do it.
Yeah.
Like I said, dude, I'm not a homo or nothing like that, but I could not believe it, man. Like I heard the rumors, you know what I mean? Like even Vader and Scorp were real tight because Vader helped Scorpio get in the dojo in New Japan, you know, and Vader would tell Scorpio, listen, you come to my house. Don't be wearing them spandex pants because your fucking cock is all over the place. I mean, my wife looking at it, he would yell at him and say, wear regular jeans or something.
I'll give you a few more and then I'll let you go. One person we never hear about, Hack Myers.
Great guy, man. It's a shame he passed away young.
Yeah.
I mean, he had the crowd in ECW. He would just punch you and the whole place would be like, shot, shot. I mean, it was the weirdest thing, but in our company, the people loved it, you know, and he got a good spot. I mean, I don't know if he ever had a strap or anything like that, but he didn't need a belt. He was over like Rover and he didn't even need a belt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ron and Don, the Harris twins.
Great guys. Like I had no problem with them. We would always work with them. And like I said, we had to change our style to work these guys that are 6'7" and 6'8", and we're 5'9" and 5'10". You know, so we would do a lot of rolls. You know, they put the big leg up, we roll underneath it. Then they turn around, we would hit them with a back spin kick. And, you know, we just made it work. So when we did go over, nobody could say, oh, that didn't look real. That didn't look possible. But once the match was done, people were like, oh, shit. Because they jumped on Hack one time after the match and tried to beat the shit out of him, man. So.
I'll give you a few more. Johnny Hotbody.
Good friend of mine at one time, man. I was tight with him. Going through school, we were going to school together because he was living in South Philly at the time I was, and we would drive together sometimes. And it's a shame too because he was there for a while, and then he got in an argument with somebody, and things just didn't work out, and Paul fired him. You know, and before you know it, like Tony Stetson and what's his name? The Iron Man, Tommy Cairo, like all these guys just started to leave. Like they were letting everybody go, you know, because like I said, we were getting new talent coming in, and you know, even though they were originals, they were getting played out. You know, that's what I think happened.
Yeah, 911.
Great guy. Al was a big farm strong motherfucker, natural. You know what I mean? He's one of them guys that are farm strong. You know what I mean? Like they'll pick up a horse. You know what I mean? I remember Taz saying he wanted to beat him up, and I would look at Taz and say, bro, he'll kill you. I mean, you're a peanut. You look like this next to him. I'm serious, you know? I would never fuck with 911. He's too big.
Buddy Landell.
Awesome. I loved him. He was very funny. I just had one problem with him. We had a match in NWA, and we were doing a steel cage, and I shot him across the ring, and when I went to splash, he put his knee up, and it hit my knee, and he popped my knee. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, were you that afraid I was going to stiff you? You know what I mean? I wasn't going to stiff you. And that's what happened. That was the last time I ended up talking to Buddy.
Yeah. I'll give you two more then. Let's say JT Smith.
Great kid, man. He was very polite. I loved it when they put him in as the Italian, the FBI, and he was black, and he would come into the ring and go, yo, and he was a black dude, you know what I'm saying? So it worked out great, you know, and I was very thankful to him for dropping the TV belt to me, you know, so at least I became TV champion.
And we can't end the segment without getting the story about the Sandman from you.
What story?
Any story, the funniest story that you can think of with the Sandman. In fact, I've even written down, were you there the night that he overdosed and died, and then they revived him, and then he wrestled that night?
He supposedly he OD'd. I wasn't in the van. I happened to be at the hotel at the time. The guys thought he was dead, so they brought him to the emergency room, threw him out of the car, and took off. Okay. So they put him in the emergency room. I guess they brought him back to life. And next thing you know, we're at the building, and here comes Sandman walking in the door, just got out of the hospital. And we're all looking at him. He's like, and we're like, what the, like, oh shit, we thought you died. And he's like, man, I'm not dead. Give me my beer. And he just started drinking again. It was pretty crazy. Another time we got pulled over in Ohio, and the cop was just like, because we had the Sandman van. So there'd be Sabu, Rob Van Dam, me and my partner, Rick Root, all the guys that were in the clique, we would be in that van. And I remember we got pulled over in Ohio, and the cop was just like, man, I am not going to sit here and work on paperwork all night. He opened up a bottle. Was like, what is this? A bottle of Lucky Charms? There's like 9 different pills in this bottle, all different kinds. He's like, get out of my state. That's what the cop said. Get out of my state. And I remember like the guys that couldn't even get out of the van that night were stuck in the van. They were snoring. They didn't even know we got pulled over, and the cop was like, just get out of our state. And we rolled.
Did you ever share an aeroplane with Sandman?
Oh, yeah, many times.
Yeah. I've heard that there was never a flight with Sandman that didn't end up in some sort of debauchery thanks to him.
Well, one of the flights that I was on that was crazy was the Bulldogs were on that flight. And Dynamite went in the bathroom and took all his clothes off and walked down the fucking plane naked. Naked. And back then, you got to remember, flying was fun. We were able to do whatever we wanted to do on that plane. We would drink like maniacs. We would get hammered. Everything. Now it sucks flying, dude. It's horrible. I hate it.
Yeah. And Sandman versus New Jack, who was the crazier of the two?
New Jack.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because New Jack, if he didn't like you and he thought you were going to try to pull something, he always brought a weapon in the ring. He'll stab you. He didn't care, So he pulled a fork out one time on me. I'm like, motherfucker, you better put that fucking fork away. And he was like, all right.
You better be hungry with that fork in your hand.
Yeah.
Right, listen, thank you so much for spending so much time with me. I'm going to do the sign-off now, but before I do, I'm going to tell you all this. I'm going to tell the viewers, the watchers here, what I didn't ask you. I didn't ask anything about, I bet you're glad that I didn't ask about the Shane Douglas neck-breaking thing. Every interview brings that up, but I decided not to. I didn't talk about Public Enemy. I didn't talk about, God, so many stuff. The weapons of ECW, the headhunters. I've got a million different things I didn't talk about, so could be a part 2.
We can always do this again, brother.
Yeah, we can always do this again, and if you're game for it, I will. But thank you very much for joining me, and thank you very much, everybody, and I will catch you next week.
You got it. Peace, people. Talk to you.